The police found the dinner table perfectly set for four. The steaks were still warm, the wine had just been poured, and the classical music was playing softly from the record player. The only thing missing was the family. No blood, no struggle, just four empty chairs and a single, handwritten note on the napkin that read, "Hi everyone, welcome to 1% Crime. I know you can't sleep, so I'll accompany you with crime stories that happened all over the world before we get to the story. Tell me, where did you hear it from? And if you like this content, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let's jump straight into the story. Kathy. The Silent Frequency of Oakhaven. Part 1. The Hollow Home. Rain drummed against the roof of the Miller family home, a steady, melancholic symphony that wrapped the affluent neighborhood of Oakhaven in a shroud of gloom. Detective Elias Thorne stood at the threshold, his dark coat slick with mist, the scent of wet pine mingling with the faint, lingering aroma of grilled steaks. The door swung open into an eerie silence, the kind that pressed against one's ears and stifled the breath. "Detective Thorne," a voice broke through the stillness. It was Officer Jamie Lawson, a fresh-faced recruit with a nervous energy that contrasted sharply with the somber atmosphere. She peered into the house, her eyes wide as they danced over the opulent interior. The family was here, and then they just vanished. Thorne nodded, stepping inside, his senses heightened. The air was thick with an unsettling stillness, punctuated only by the faint hum of the refrigerator and the soft tick-tock of an antique clock in the adjoining room. As he moved further into the home, the sound of his footsteps echoed against the hardwood floors, creaking underfoot like an old man's cough. The dining room was impeccably set, the mahogany table adorned with fine china and crystal wine glasses that still vibrated slightly, a residual effect of the family's abrupt departure. Thorne could almost hear the laughter that had once filled the space, the clinking of glasses, the animated chatter, all replaced now with a profound silence that felt almost palpable. "Warm," he murmured, glancing at the steaks that lay untouched on their plates, the juices still glistening under the dim chandelier lights. They were just here. His mind raced as he scanned the room, noting the half-open bottle of red wine, dark liquid pooling towards the neck. It seemed to mock him, a reminder of life that had been abruptly snuffed out. "Sir," Lawson called, her voice shaky as she stepped into the living room. "You need to see this." Thorne followed her gaze to the coffee table where a single piece of paper lay, pristine and stark against the dark wood, a note scrawled in hasty strokes. It read, "We finally found the frequency." "Who leaves a note like that?" Lawson asked, her brow furrowing in confusion. "Someone who thinks they're onto something," Thorne replied, his voice low and contemplative. He felt a shiver run down his spine, the kind that whispered of secrets buried deep within the walls of this house. He took a breath, inhaling the mix of rain and something else, something metallic that lingered in the air. "We need to secure the scene and get a forensics team in here." He turned, his instincts sharpening as he stepped outside onto the porch, the rain now a gentle drizzle, washing the world into a blur of gray. He looked down the street, the rows of elegant homes standing like silent sentinels, each harboring its own secrets. Oakhaven had always felt like a place removed from the chaos of the outside world, but today it felt suffocating, a bubble waiting to burst. "Detective," Lawson called, breaking his reverie. "What now?" Thorne turned back to her, eyes narrowing. "We dig deeper. These people didn't just disappear into thin air. We need to understand what they were involved in. Let's start with the neighbors. Someone must have seen something." As they ventured out into the damp evening, the rain began to fall heavier, pooling in the streets and soaking into the earth. Thorne's mind churned with questions. What had the Millers been searching for? And what connection did that note have to their vanishing? The investigation was just beginning, and with it came the heavy weight of the unknown, pressing down like the thick fog that settled over Oakhaven, wrapping the community in a cloak of unease. Part 2. The Sound of Madness. The following morning, the sun broke through the clouds, casting a pale light over the Miller home. Thorne returned, driven by a nagging curiosity that had taken root in his mind. The forensics team had come and gone, leaving behind a quiet house echoing with the ghost of its former life. "Detective," Lawson greeted him as he stepped through the door, her voice laced with excitement. "You need to see what we found in the basement." Thorne's pulse quickened as he followed her down a narrow staircase, the wooden steps creaking beneath their weight. The basement was unlike any he had encountered before, a sprawling space filled with high-end audio equipment, cables snaking across the floor like veins. It was a labyrinth of technology, a stark contrast to the otherwise pristine home. "What the hell were they doing down here?" Thorne muttered as he examined the equipment. There were speakers that looked like they belonged in a concert hall, a mixing board that gleamed under the fluorescent lights, and stacks of journals piled haphazardly on a desk. Lawson picked up one of the journals, its pages yellowed and worn. "It's all about infrasound," she said, flipping through the entries. "Listen to this. Frequencies below human hearing can create feelings of unease and disorientation. The right combination can cause hallucinations." Thorne's brow furrowed. What kind of experiments were they conducting? He felt a chill race down his spine. The Millers weren't just a family, they were part of something larger, something dangerous. He moved closer to the desk, his eyes scanning the meticulous notes. They detailed everything from frequency ranges to emotional responses, with sketches of sound waves intertwined with cryptic symbols. It was as if Thomas Miller had been on the brink of a breakthrough, but at what cost? "Look at this," Lawson said, pointing to a diagram. "It's a representation of sound waves interacting with the human brain. This could explain their disappearance if they were experimenting on themselves." Thorne swallowed hard, his mind racing with possibilities. "We need to find out if anyone else was involved," he said, turning to Lawson. "Friends, associates, anyone who might have known what they were up to." As they continued to sift through the remnants of the Millers' lives, Thorne felt an unsettling sense of urgency. The note, the basement, the family, they were all pieces of a puzzle that had yet to reveal its complete picture. "Detective," Lawson said hesitantly, her eyes darting around the basement. "What if this is more than just a missing persons case? What if it's something darker?" Thorne met her gaze, a flicker of understanding passing between them. "That's exactly what I'm afraid of," he replied, his voice steady. "We need to tread carefully. The last thing we want is to disturb whatever it is they were involved in." With a heavy heart, Thorne closed the journal in Lawson's hands. The air in the basement felt thick, charged with an energy he couldn't quite place. It was as if the walls themselves were whispering secrets, begging to be uncovered. As they ascended the stairs, Thorne felt the weight of the Millers, fate pressing down on him. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were only beginning to scratch the surface of something sinister, a truth that lay hidden beneath the frequency of silence. Part 3. The Ghost of 1994. Days turned into weeks as Thorne and Lawson continued to unravel the threads of the Miller case. Each interview with neighbors revealed more layers of secrecy surrounding the family, but it was a conversation with an old woman named Agnes that sent chills down Thorne's spine. "Detective," she rasped, her frail hands shaking as she clutched a cup of tea. "You remind me of a man who came here years ago, back in '94. He spoke of sound, of frequencies that could change your mind." Thorne leaned forward, intrigued. "What do you remember about him?" Agnes closed her eyes, lost in memory. "He called himself the architect, said he could unlock the secrets of the universe through sound. People followed him, you know. They believed every word." Thorne's heart raced as he scribbled notes. "Did you ever see anyone harmed? Did anyone go missing?" Agnes's gaze darkened, her voice dropping to a whisper. "A few. They said he had a way of making you see things that weren't real. I lost my son to that madness." "Your son?" Thorne pressed, desperate for more details. He was drawn to the architect's promise of enlightenment. He thought he could ascend, become something greater. But when he came back, he wasn't the same. He spoke in riddles, and then he disappeared. Thorne felt a knot tighten in his stomach. The parallels between the Millers and Agnes's son were too striking to ignore. "Do you think the architect is still out there?" he asked, his voice laced with urgency. Agnes's eyes met his, a flicker of fear igniting. "I don't know, but if you're looking for answers, you need to dig deeper. The people who followed him, they never truly left." Thorne's mind reeled with the implications. The connection between the Millers and the cult-like figure from the past was becoming clearer, and yet the path ahead was fraught with shadows. Later that evening, as he sat in his dimly lit office, Thorne pored over old case files related to the architect. The more he read, the more he understood the manipulation of sound and its psychological impact on the human mind. In the margins, he scribbled notes, piecing together a timeline that stretched back to the early 90s. The architect had gathered a following, promising enlightenment through sound, but the truth was darker, a web of control that led to madness and disappearance. Thorne leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. He needed to find someone who had survived the experience, someone who could shed light on what had transpired. The next day, determined to follow this lead, he reached out to a nearby community center, hoping to locate any survivors willing to share their stories. After hours of searching, he found a woman named Clara, a soft-spoken artist whose eyes held a profound sadness. "Clara," he began, his tone gentle, "can you tell me about your experience with the architect?" She hesitated, her hands fidgeting as she spoke. "It was as if he had a hold over us," she whispered, her voice trembling. "He used sound to manipulate our thoughts, to make us see visions. I thought I was being awakened, but it was a nightmare." "What kind of visions?" Thorne urged, leaning closer. "Images of a world beyond this one," she said, her gaze distant. "But they were twisted, dark. After a while, I started to hear whispers, voices that told me to follow him, to trust him." Thorne's heart raced as he connected the dots. "And the others, did they disappear?" Clara nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "A few did. They believed they could ascend, that he would take them to a higher plane of existence. I'm not sure what happened to them." The weight of her words hung heavy in the air. Thorne could feel the darkness closing in around him. The Millers, Agnes's son, Clara's friends, they had all fallen victim to the same insidious trap. As he left the community center, the evening sky darkened, clouds swirling ominously overhead. The streets of Oakhaven felt suffocating, the weight of the past pressing down on him. He knew he was getting closer to the truth, but the closer he got, the more he felt the pulse of danger quickening around him. Part 4. The Hertzian Gate. Thorne spent the following days delving into the digital underbelly of the internet, a realm where conspiracy theories flourished and cults found sanctuary. He combed through forums, searching for any mention of the architect or the concept of sound as a means of ascension. Late one night, as he navigated through a labyrinth of links, he stumbled upon a forum dedicated to the Hertzian Gate. It was a digital cult that believed specific sound frequencies could unlock hidden potential within the human mind. "Join us," the site proclaimed, a siren's call echoing through the screen. "Vibrate at the correct frequency and transcend the bounds of reality." Thorne felt a shiver run down his spine as he browsed through the threads. Members spoke of ascending, sharing their experiences of sound-induced ecstasy and visions of enlightenment. But beneath the surface, there was an undercurrent of desperation, a longing that felt almost palpable. He began to thread together the connections, recognizing that the Millers had likely been drawn into this web. They weren't merely victims, they were seekers, searching for something beyond the mundane. As he dug deeper, Thorne discovered chilling accounts from former members of the cult. Many spoke of manipulation, of losing touch with reality, and of friends who had vanished. lost to the siren call of the Hertzian gate. "You're in too deep," one former member warned. "Once you hear the sound, there's no going back. They'll take you and you won't even know it." Thorne felt a knot of fear twist in his stomach. The Millers had been searching for a frequency, but they had found something far more sinister. With newfound urgency, he reached out to cybercrime units, hoping to trace the digital footprints of the cult. They confirmed that the members communicated through encrypted channels, but there were patterns, locations, gatherings, and an impending event that sent chills down his spine. As he pieced together the information, Thorne felt the walls closing in. The Millers were not just lost. They were likely part of an elaborate scheme that preyed on the vulnerable, promising them salvation through sound. He couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. The Hertzian Gate was set to host a gathering in the Cascades, a secluded location that matched the descriptions from Clara and Agnes. As he prepared for the journey, Thorne felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. He needed to confront this darkness, to confront the architect, and perhaps, just perhaps, find a way to bring the Millers back from the abyss. Part 5: The Hunt in the Woods. The Cascades loomed before Thorne like a dark sentinel, their peaks shrouded in mist and mystery. He drove through the winding roads, the trees closing in around him like a living wall. The air was thick with anticipation, and the sound of rain pattering against his windshield echoed in his ears. As he parked and stepped out, the dampness enveloped him, clinging to his skin like a second layer. He pulled up the hood of his coat, scanning the area for any signs of life. The forest was alive with the sounds of nature, but beneath it all, he could feel an energy pulsing, a frequency that sent shivers down his spine. Thorne moved cautiously through the underbrush, following the faint sound of voices that carried on the wind. As he neared a clearing, he caught sight of a flickering fire and a group of figures gathered around it, their faces illuminated by the glow. He crept closer, heart pounding in his chest. The scene was surreal, a ritualistic gathering where members of the Hertzian Gate spoke in hushed tones, their eyes gleaming with fervor. "Feel the sound," one of them urged, raising a small speaker towards the sky. "Let it wash over you, let it guide you." Thorne's breath hitched as he watched, horrified. The sound they played was low, a droning hum that seemed to vibrate through the ground itself. He could see the rapturous expressions on their faces, the way they swayed as if entranced. "Now," someone shouted, their voice piercing through the haze, "ascend." In that moment, chaos erupted. Thorne's instincts kicked in as he moved forward, pushing through the crowd. He needed to find the Millers, to pull them back from this madness before it consumed them entirely. "Detective," a voice called, and he turned to see Lawson emerging from the shadows, her face pale. "We need to get out of here." "No," he said firmly, shaking his head. "We need to find the Millers." They pushed deeper into the gathering, the sound growing louder, more intense. The energy felt almost electric, pulsating through the air like a living entity. Thorne's heart raced, each beat echoing in time with the sound that surrounded him. As they moved through the throng, Thorne spotted a familiar face, Thomas Miller, standing at the edge of the firelight, his expression vacant and lost. "Thomas," Thorne shouted, breaking through the crowd. "It's me, Detective Thorne. You need to come with me." But Thomas didn't react. His eyes were glazed over, his body swaying as if caught in a trance. Thorne's heart sank as he realized the truth. This wasn't just a gathering. It was a ritual, a manipulation of sound that had ensnared the Millers in its grasp. "Get him," Thorne ordered Lawson, urgency coursing through him. "We have to break the hold they have on him." As they grabbed Thomas, he turned to them, eyes wide with confusion. "You have to listen. The frequency is the key," he babbled, desperation creeping into his voice. "We found it. We were so close." Thorne's heart raced. "No, Thomas, you have to come back with us." But the sound grew louder, a cacophony of voices rising around them, drowning out reason. Thorne felt the pull of the frequency, a dark temptation that threatened to engulf him. "Hold on," Lawson shouted, her grip tightening on Thomas. "We can't let them take you." With a surge of determination, Thorne pulled Thomas away from the fire, the sound reverberating against his bones. They stumbled backward, the chaos around them intensifying, but Thorne refused to let go. "Get out," he yelled, pushing through the throngs of cult members, dragging Thomas and Lawson with him. "We have to escape." As they burst through the edge of the gathering, the sound began to fade, the hold it had on Thomas loosening. The forest closed in behind them, the trees standing tall like guardians against the darkness. Panting, they finally broke free, collapsing against the rough bark of a tree, the pulsing sound now a distant echo. Thorne looked at Thomas, who blinked as if waking from a nightmare. "What happened?" Thomas gasped, confusion etched across his face. "Where are my family?" Thorne's heart ached at the desperation in his voice. "We need to find them. They're still out there." As they caught their breath, Thorne knew the confrontation with the architect was inevitable. The Millers were still in danger, and he couldn't allow the frequency to claim another victim. Part 6: The Mysterious Package. In the quiet town of Maplewood, the sun dipped low behind the rooftops, casting long shadows across the cobblestone streets. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and the faintest hint of wood smoke. At the end of Willow Lane stood a quaint little house, its white picket fence slightly askew, and on its porch sat a small package, unassuming yet intriguing. Curiosity brews. The package was no larger than a shoebox, wrapped in brown paper and tied with a single piece of twine. Its edges were frayed, and it bore no return address, only the name Pat scrawled in hurried, looping handwriting. 6 years old, Pat was known throughout the neighborhood for her boundless curiosity and adventurous spirit. Today, she was drawn to the package like a moth to a flame. Unwrapping wonder. With her heart racing, Pat approached the porch. She knelt down, brushing her fingertips over the rough texture of the paper. What could it be? A treasure? A secret? The possibilities danced in her mind like fireflies in the twilight. Slowly, she began to peel away the layers, the twine falling to the ground like forgotten dreams. A world inside. Inside, she found a collection of colorful stones, each one shimmering with a different hue. There were deep blues, vibrant greens, and fiery reds. Each stone seemed to pulse with a life of its own. But nestled among them was a small, hand-painted wooden figure, a girl with wide eyes and a bright smile. Pat picked it up, feeling an immediate connection, as if the figure had come to life through her touch. Imagination unleashed. As she held the figure, a wave of stories washed over her. The girl could be a brave explorer, discovering hidden worlds beneath the surface of the ocean, or a fierce warrior, defending her enchanted forest from shadowy creatures. Pat's imagination soared, and suddenly, the package was no longer just a box of stones. It was a portal to adventure. The power of discovery. With each stone she picked up, Pat wove a tale, sharing her newfound treasures with the world around her. She invited friends over, and together they created magical lands, where the only limit was their imagination. The little wooden figure became their guide, leading them on grand quests, and the colorful stones became their enchanted artifacts, each one holding a story waiting to be told. A lasting legacy. As the days turned into weeks, the package transformed Pat's life and the lives of her friends. They learned the joy of storytelling, the magic of friendship, and the beauty found in simple things. The mysterious package, meant for only Pat, became a cherished memory for all, a reminder that sometimes the greatest treasures are hidden in plain sight, waiting for curious hearts to discover them.